Yeah.
I think also that ties into, I believe, what's called the two soul theory. I don't know if you're familiar with that spirituality, but where in the beginning, in the non-physical form, there's two soul, like female and male energy, and when we're in the physical plane, we're completely searching for that other half of ourselves, that unified female-male quality part of ourselves, which also is known as the soulmate theory. And I'm thinking, listening to your wonderful information on a lot of these topics today, if you break it down into the physical situation, it kind of also, in my mind, brings like that sort of, that wanting to disconnect it. And so I guess my question regarding that would be, why do you think there is a power struggle for domination between female and male, going back ancient culture to present, with respect to the elitists and let's say the dark roots above the pyramid scheme?
Yeah, that's a neat question, very, very deep. But it's impossible to answer in such a short time, because you're now talking about the origins of the struggle. Because remember, the sword-wielding, okay, let's just talk, imagine we were just speaking purely from a mainstream point of view, right? Imagine right now we're in that alternative, we're just talking from a mainstream point of view. You have to ask the question, why is it all over the world that the sword-wielding, solar, patriarchal Indo-Europeans, as I say, let's speak strictly from an anthropological point, why did those masculine groups get it into their heads one day to get on their horsebacks and just go and slaughter wholesale entire cults, peoples, tribes? You know, there's got to be a reason. And remember, you would easily have an answer if it just only happened in one corner of Asia, one corner of Europe. You go, oh well, yeah, you know, the weather caused it. Or no, wait a minute, these guys have been feuding for years. You know, like in a Native American context, where you go, oh, the guys at the other side of the hill, you know, these Indian groups that have had age-old conflicts. So one day they just want to slaughter themselves. You can kind of answer it. But over the whole world, what we're talking about here was all over the world. From all through Asia, all through Far East, into Europe, even parts of Africa, and the same kind of paradigm happened, so that the remnants of the matriarchy can barely be discovered. Wait, they're going to somewhere like Crete and digging a tiny little island, that's all you got? You know, and a handful of scholars, and Maria Gimbentus and, you know, 2 or 3 others. I mean, what is this? This is unbelievable. You mean to tell us that for thousands of years leading up to the Neolithic period, you know, there was this other paradigm? You damn well know that it was, because anyone only had to study the ancient Irish legends to know that the goddess tradition, just like the pyramid itself, couldn't exist just 5 minutes before. It had to have gone back into the dawn, into the dark depths of, you know, eternity, because its principles are just too sophisticated to have been invented a few hundred years before the birth of Jesus. So you know that these cultures, you know, existed thousands of years ago, because there's so many sociological, cultural idioms, like music, like basket weaving, like child rearing, and all the rest of it, that simply can't be invented overnight. They have to have antiquity. New evidence showing the settlements on the Saraswati River in India, you know, show that these 10,000 years BC, people were very sophisticated. So the lies that we've been told. And who are those liars? The same patriarchal, authoritarian, patristic institutions, you know, that have their roots in this coming of these, you know, patriarchal civilizations, shall we call them, that then wiped out what was there before. But you're asking, what was the reason? And you know, I am going to be dealing with that, because all struggles have a reason. And that, to me, is the most fascinating part, really, of all of this study that I'm doing right now, is the actual reason. I'm not going to talk about it now because it would take too long, and also it's going to be one of the central parts of the Female Illuminati, is the actual reason why this age-old conflict. I'm not just putting you off. It's a very, I have a very good reason for doing this, because I'm still working on it. I'm still myself learning. A lot of stuff that I've been doing in the last lot of years has been turning around in real time, very shortly after I've even learned the thing myself. You know, when I started, it was stuff I was drawing up from 20 years ago. It's no longer like that. A lot of the things I'm doing right now, I'm rediscovering. So we're going to be looking at the same stuff I went into in the Atlantis book, about the Garden of Eden story, about the conflict, about Adam and Eve, and the whole genetic thing, and the symbolism of the Tree of Life, but this time from a little bit different angle. I've always said in my work that you're meant to walk around this thing, treat it like a gemstone, treat it like a thing of great value. It looks different in different lights. I can't stand these people who go, well, you know, yeah, we got the facts. Got the facts? What are you talking about? The Illuminati's laughing. If the moment that you say that, they're happy. Because they know that you haven't got it together at all. You've only been into the subject for 5 minutes, and that's the whole human race. How could you possibly know how the world structure came into existence, how all these mega questions exist, and you're just saying, oh no, I just took one look at it and I got it. This thing is so multifaceted. I talk it as like a Rubik's Cube, and of which you can only see 3 sides of any cube. So you've got to do some real study to walk around and look at it in different lights, different perspectives, and that's what we're going to be doing with this subject, because that Garden of Eden story is fascinating. And I spent my whole life to write the Atlantis book, was what I'd done since I was a child, since 13 years of age to the day I wrote that. That's one perspective. That was one journey of discovery, but it doesn't stop at the writing of that book. There are other ways to look at this whole concept of Eve and who she was, right? And in the Atlantis book, it was mostly a positive rendering of that archetype. But there are other ways to look at it, and that includes this Lilith character and how she's represented in myths coming later, and also how she was the prototype, these fascinating goddess characters prior to the Christian era. Really interesting stuff there. And how, what did the church who re-scripted this, these churchmen who re-scripted it, what did they gain from that? Have they gained anything? Well, I believe, yes, they have. They've gained world control from doing it. Because the amount of suppression that happens psychologically when you repress the feminine leaves you, just makes you just jelly in their hands, putty in their hands, the moment that you're not an integrated being. Because as all martial artists know, there's one sitting right beside you there, the yin energy is as strong as the masculine. It is not weak. Oh, the lies we've been taught. The lies we've been taught. It's harder to walk downhill than it is uphill. It's harder to keep your eyes perfectly straight and steady, and harder to sit in a yoga pose than it is to be moving around. So martial arts have known from BC that the so-called yin energy is not weak. But we in the Western world have been taught a pack of lies about the feminine energy, as I said a few minutes ago, about we've got a skewed understanding. The moment you mention females and feminine, you're thinking in terms of weakness and complicity and compliance and subservience. What a lot of nonsense. And by reading the Irish myths and other things like that, you soon get that knocked on the head. That there was a whole class of warrior queens in ancient days that the modern educational groups don't want you to know about. And there was a whole bunch of rites and rituals. You can use the heading underworld cycle rituals that was involved in the training of the young king hero. It wasn't just 12, it wasn't just 6 overworld cycles in which the Solar King went around and cudgeled people over the head and, rode against fellow knights in the classic way. There was this whole other transition, this whole other set of tests that were infinitely more threatening to him, to his ego, that he may not have been able to overcome. And the whole purpose of that was to make him an integrated being so that he realized that he just didn't have a world to go around and conquer, that there was an inner world. And as the moment that the druidic cults were killed and that these female cults were overthrown, the idea of going through that process of the underworld started to be, stripped down. You have still, but it's a very paltry way. In some Masonic sort of rituals, you kind of have it, the whole idea about being born again, from the coffin and all. So they still have the sort of outward trappings of it, right? But they don't have it by any means. The whole thing is completely changed. And that did enormous damage. Like I said, as you said, they will wear the trappings. The priests will wear the robes. They'll still have the baptismal font of the salted water, which represented the womb, and you'll still have all the feminine symbols. You still have a Mother Mary, but what the hell is that? It's all stripped down. It's very banal. And now you've got even a new emphasis in taking the psyche of the female into a new level of debauchery. Okay, so right now there's even a step up. As of late, probably since the new millennium, and these videos, these rock videos, and these creatures that they're throwing up to the young women of today, and the fashions, it's a new step up, I believe, another intensification of the war against the female psyche, and it's damaging. So we have to be able to get this information out to, the mothers should be sharing it with their children to, again, build up the immunity that's so needed, so that this doesn't happen. But my interest is in the modern day and what's going on, but always to tie it back to the roots, because none of this tyranny, none of this mind control started 100 years ago or 10 minutes ago. It has its roots going way, way back into some of the darkest aspects of history. And so, you know, the projects continue to try and bring that to the light.